You know, after 3 videos of the same structure, I kinda just got burned out of making those kinds of videos. So you know what? Let's change up the pace. Today, we are doing Metaphor ReFantazio's party members tier list. People like tier list, didn't they? This is my first time doing a tier list video, so let me put down some of the rules first. I don't plan on making a party member tier list based on their character or story, because when you put it that way, well, everyone is on S tier for me. And saying which character has a great personality and or backstory is downright subjective. And people would have different opinions on that, so it's just redundant to talk about that in the video. What I'm going to talk about is the gameplay systems that come from these party members, down to how they perform as a unit, to the bonus effects from their follower bonds. Basically anything pertaining to the gameplay performance of these characters. And to top the rules off, keep in mind that these can be subjective as well. And these ranks are my opinion on the matter. You can have a different opinion for the ranks, and that's kinda where the fun of tier lists are. Oh yeah, before we start, I should mention that the list contains spoilers of who joins at a later stage of the game. You probably have known who these are, but just in case I just mentioned after Heismay, the party members are kinda spoilery. With that out of the way, let's jump straight into the first party member of the game.
My name is Leon Strohl the Alligators.
Well, right off the bat, we have a bias alert, because Strohl is my definite favorite character in this game, and it's definitely not because of his resemblance in appearance. I love Strohl both for his character and his gameplay, but this tier list isn't about his character study, so let's focus on his gameplay side of things. Strohl starts off as the warrior of the party, the one that boasts strength and deals the most amount of physical damage. However, as he branches out to other archetypes, we realize that his stat spread is pretty even between the 5 stats, with strength still the highest of the stats. This makes Strohl a very versatile character to channel almost all archetypes. He basically can be slotted as a wild card role. While not the best, it's very nice to have a character other than your protagonist to be basically the second protagonist. However, that in itself is kinda limited when you put his follower bond special perk into consideration, because critical hits can only be done with physical attacks. Like all playable party members, Strohl has 2 slots of special perks that can be obtained by doing their follower bonds, and Strohl's slot of special perk is that he had a higher chance of critical hit against humans. Knowing that critical hits can only be done with physical attacks, it basically goes back to Strohl being locked into strength-based archetypes, while my argument for him being good is that he's versatile. I mean, this is only against humans, and there's not a lot of human enemies other than boss fights. But well, the contradiction is still kinda there, it's a case-by-case situation here. But in the case of being a physical damage dealer against humans, he is super useful for this, as he will be more likely to deal critical hits, dealing huge amounts of damage. So yeah, he's still a strong character, which is why he's one of my favorite characters in the game. Although I kinda have to mention some anomaly that I have with Strohl that I can't really explain. For some reason in my experience, Strohl misses a lot of his attacks, like more than anybody in the team. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but I don't know. I just thought it was weird. Anyway, he's still great. A tier.
That voice. Grius! Oh, thank goodness.
This is an obligatory mention of Grius, or Grius, since technically he's a party member. Yeah. His strength is good with mage in the North Mines. His weakness? He's dead. C tier.
My name is Iselin Pacelli Machal Hulkenberg.
You know, when Metaphor ReFantazio was first announced, as a Persona fan, I was hyped but cautiously skeptical about it, because why wasn't this just Persona 6? Why is this a new IP? Well, that's not really the case, because every second through the trailers of Metaphor ReFantazio, I get more hype as it shows so much more amazing stuffs. But to top it all off, Hulkenberg is on display, and is voiced in Japanese by Hayami Saori. This is probably the most personal thing to be hyped about because she is my favorite Japanese voice actor ever. So hearing her finally voicing a playable character in a Persona adjacent title that actually sticks around is the sole reason why I wanted to play this game. So how was she on the gameplay side of things? Well, let's just say she is satisfying. Hulkenberg starts as the Knight, basically the tank of the team with high endurance stat with balanced strength and magic stat. In turn-based RPG kind of game, you usually opt into maxing out damage output so that battles go out faster. So a character that maxed out endurance is usually a weird situation to have. However, with how much ReFantazio's crafted its archetype system very well, Hulkenberg's Knight archetype is so much fun to play, and in turn, she is such a strong character to cultivate into your party. You know this one Knight skill that directs aggro to the Knight? That part, every character can do that. But the difference with Hulkenberg, with her royal archetype, she can reflect incoming attacks on her. Well, Dark Knight can also do that as well, but it's on elemental damages only, where Hulkenberg can also reflect physical attacks too, which I think is most of the attacks that enemies have. That means she doesn't take any damage from that attack, and it eats up the remaining turn icons the enemy has. Oh, and even if she doesn't cast the directing aggro skill, with her follower bonds, she can also prevent the protagonist to be hit on his weakness. Basically, if you want to survive, Hulkenberg is the surefire way to do that. She's so good at keeping your team alive, it just doesn't get enough praise really. Although, if you want to talk about overall strength and weaknesses, it's kinda disingenuous to ignore that her damage output isn't that good, especially when she's a Knight. It's decent, but not as good as the others obviously, because she's a character that focuses on defense first and anything else second, but that makes her play into her niche really well. I think I've said enough about Hulkenberg. She's such an amazing character to have. A+ tier. Only being dragged down from S because of her not too stellar damage output.
I am Heismay Nocturne.
Heismay is the speedy type of character in basically any RPGs that basically stacks agility. I have a conflicting feeling about Heismay because although I like playing as the character that has a theme of being the speedy type of character, the execution on Heismay is rather lacking. It's mostly a problem of how so little damage he does. A quick look at his stat makes it pretty obvious, because his strength and magic stats are not good, like worse than a Hulkenberg. But let's back off a bit and talk about his good sides first. Having high agility stat is great for the purpose of attack accuracy and dodging attacks. He also has a good amount of luck stat as well, presumably for the purpose of landing critical hits or landing ailments as well, as Thief has ailments in their arsenal. That's as far as it goes though, and these can be a detriment because these aspects of the character are still chance-based. With the nature of the turn-based RPG, especially in Atlus games where dodging and landing critical hits directly alter the playing field, these are balanced to be very uncommon to the point that it may as well not be a thing, unless you use buffs or debuffs. Yes, he dodges pretty frequently due to his high agility, but it's still a chance-based occurrence, so you can't really rely on it at all times. So I don't really see the value of having to stack huge amounts of agility and luck, especially when in turn you sacrifice damage, where it is more valuable to end an encounter quickly. Higher agility characters will also go first in your party's turn, but with the nature of the press turn combat system, you can't abuse having higher agility to essentially have more turns before your enemy has their turn. So it's also not too much of an advantage to have higher agility for turns. Heismay's follower bond perks are pretty good though. One of them lets you assess dungeons so you don't go straight into enemies way above your level, so you don't meet with the game over screen too often, and the other is bonus damage on ambushing enemies, which I guess solidifies the gimmick of Heismay. He's more suited for dungeon crawling than boss fights. as he shines more on dungeon crawling with these perks. If you look at it that way, he's still a solid character, but in comparison with the others, he kinda just fell apart. So, B tier. Okay, I hope you are ready for the remaining party members, because this is where I think is the line for spoiler territory, starting with
Behold, my voice rises from the depths of my heart.
Junah is the first proper magic focused character in the party. She's also the dedicated magic user in the party, as evident from the archetype she starts with, the masked dancer, and the insanely huge amounts of magic that she has. Out of all the party members, she will definitely deal the highest magic damage, with a good hit rate as well because of her good agility stat. But in turn, she doesn't have the strength to do physical damage, which isn't a big issue since you can just avoid slotting physical attacks for Junah. Her endurance stat is also pretty bad, but is compensated by the agility stat to have a similar effect as Heismay, a nimble character that relies on dodging to survive. Yet I think Junah is executed better when compared to Heismay. The hyper focus on magic stat gets more benefits than losses. It's the same logic as why most people usually opt to max out either strength or magic on these kinds of games. So Junah benefits a lot with high magic while having some agility and luck at the expense of terrible strength and endurance. This is also amplified by Junah's follower bond perks, being the ability to regenerate MP after battle for all allies. It is such a valuable perk to have, especially in Atlas games that are infamously known for the MP's shortage in dungeons. So, needless to say, Junah gets a really high tier for me at A+. Not on S tier, because I still have problems relying on agility-based survivability. Dodging is still unreliable as it is still chance-based, even though your character may have higher chances to dodge with their higher agility stat. So, yeah, A+ tier.
If I cannot save them in death, then I swear I'll protect them with my life.
Ah, Eupha. Every time I go on the internet, I always get different opinions on her. At one time, she's like the fan favorite female character of the community, but some other time, she's like the most mid character in the game. Personally, I'm in the favorite camp because it's just heartwarming seeing a sheltered character see the whole outside world. Although I can see why some people would not be attracted to her because her introduction could simply be better executed. What are we talking about here? Oh yeah, the character's gameplay, right. Eupha is simply put the magic version of Strohl. She's an all-rounder that skews a little bit on magic stat and arguably had a lot going on as an all-rounder due to her starting and royal archetype as the summoner. It's arguably better when compared with warrior because of summoner having a multitude of utilities in their kit, while generally dealing a great amount of magic damage due to Eupha's magic stat. So to put it simply, she's great, similar to how great Strohl is. That being said, her follower bond perk left a lot to be desired. Reducing the chances of getting inflicted by anxiety as a bond perk is certainly useful. Anxiety is quite a crippling ailment to get inflicted to, and the perk itself had a noticeable effect. Your party won't get inflicted by anxiety most of the time when being ambushed, but there are definitely still instances when anxiety is still inflicted on party members. This mechanic does not disappear completely, but you can just not get ambushed. Well, jokes aside, the effect is straight up worse than the critical hit for Strohl, for example. It's not an additional bonus or a new effect or mechanic, but it is just a chance decrease of an existing mechanic that it feels kinda lame. So, not really a good follower bond perk. This is the only thing that drags her down from the same rank as Strohl, to be honest. So Eupha, in my opinion, goes to B+ tier. Not at the same level as Heismay, but lower than Strohl.
See you around, Del.
And last, and definitely not least, Basilio. In fact, I'm going to spoil it right away. Basilio is the best party member in the game. Let's talk about his stats first. Basilio boasts a lot more strength and endurance for a physical-based character, but terrible other stats. But to be honest, these are not too important for a character like Basilio. All that he needs is strength to deal huge amounts of damage while being durable with his high endurance. This is amplified with Berserker as his archetype, because Berserker is such a physical powerhouse that still is durable due to the stats and the strength against physical affinities. Now with all of this, with him being durable like this, imagine that Basilio gets a bond perk that improves his survivability by adding the chance to dodge. Okay, his agility is not that good, but the way this follower bond perk works is that it is a separate dodge chance on top of what his agility stat has. So in probability language, it is straight up a higher chance to dodge. Yeah, Basilio, on top of having huge strength, huge endurance, he can dodge better than most of the party members. That in itself is worthy of being S tier. Arguably, his only weakness is his magic is horrible, making him not even be considered to use magic. But again, that's a non-issue here because physical attacks in Metaphor ReFantazio can be elementals as well. So, all in all, Basilio stands at S tier. And there it is, my tier list of party members in Metaphor ReFantazio. Again, this is my opinion on the matter, so if you have a differing opinion on the placement, do leave a comment below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.